So in today's session, we're going to be looking at the concept of routing. And in our previous sessions, what we were doing was we were creating VLANs and assigning ports and making sure that people within the same LAN will be able to communicate. And so, for example, these guys were always able to talk to these guys were able to talk to this guy, and these guys were able to talk to these guys because they were all in the same network. Now, assuming you have a scenario where you have different branches or maybe different networks that are sitting on different devices or on different routers, the idea was that we were trying to maybe create different branches. Let's say branch A, branch B, branch C, and branch D. These are different locations, and this area is not an area where we have control over. That's like a wide area network, which we'll discuss later. And so from this particular angle, we're just looking at a situation where people or networks are sitting on different networks, different routers. And so for a situation like this, we have a case where 192.1z or 1.0 network is sitting on the first device, 192.1z 2.0 network is sitting on the second device, 192.1z 3.0 network's third device, and the last one on the fourth device. Now on this router, so in this diagram, we have some number of networks. We have this network, which is network 1. We have another network 2, 3, and 4. These are the main 4 local area networks that we have within our architecture. But because there's some connection between this router and this router, this also presents another network type, which is the wide area network. And we saw that at the beginning when we're looking at network types. There's also another network, wide area network, and this is also a third wide area network. And so clearly, even though we have 4 different local area networks, in our picture, we have 7 networks, which is comprising of 4 local area networks and 3 wide area networks. And the concept of routing is more like saying, is it possible for us to have a way to move from this particular network, so the 1.0 network, and talk to somebody in maybe 2.0 network? And that's what routing is all about. But by default, based on what we have in our diagram, which is everybody sitting on a different router. So what happens is that for every router, the routers are able to only know the networks that are connected to it directly. So assuming this network, which is the 192.168.1.0, anybody on that network wants to talk to somebody on this network, the first thing that will happen is that this device will be checking its table and seeing whether or not the IP address that it's trying to get to, which is maybe 192.168.2.1, is something that belongs to its network. But funny enough, if we look at this IP address and this IP address, they sit in different networks, and so they are not in the same network, and so they will not be, this guy will realize that it's in a different subnet. And so if things are configured properly, then there should be a default gateway, which is this guy. And this guy would have to send information to this guy, more like saying, okay, if I have no information, or if I have no way to get to the next network, I need to ask my router. And so the router will only, by default, the router will only know about the networks which are connected to it. So assuming this is a 10 network, 10.0.0 network, this router only knows about 192.168.1.0 network, and also knows about the 10.0.0 network. And so even though this guy physically is connected to the second router, which is also having that second network, in terms of technology and in terms of routing, this router has no idea about where to get to or how to get to this network, because no one has told it about that particular network, and the only networks it knows about is this 2 network. And so that leads us to the concept of routing.